It's a warm welcome to another edition of the Matchbook NFL Betting Podcast, Week 11. Coming up, double digits. We are into it. Last week was good. 4 winners out of 6 bets. I am joined, as ever, by the unholy trinity of Drew Dinsick in the top left of your screen even, Adam Chernoff, fresh from MetLife and a Jets win on the bottom left of your screen, and the Professor Brad Allen in the bottom right. Gentlemen, I want a quick takeaway. We've got a couple of questions from Twitter we'll get to. Quick takeaway from Week 10. I'll start with you, Drew Dinsick.
Well, I think we saw the beginnings of, kind of what will shape the rest of the season. And, if you listen carefully and kind of read carefully at the work that the analytics community is doing around the NFL, they'll tell you that defense is not especially predictive, especially, we have like a 9 or 10 game sample now of a bunch of these teams. And if you look at some of these teams that are kind of at the top of power rankings, that are at the top of, kind of their, top of the market for winning the Super Bowl, like, of course, some of them are on the basis of their defense have performed incredibly to this point in the season. And the question we have to ask ourselves now as we handicap the rest of these games is, how predictive is that going to be? Are you going to be able to take something like San Francisco, who's gotten it done with pass rush, who's gotten it done with some timely interceptions and fumbles, and expect them to be as strong, through the later part of the season as they were when they were playing some easier opponents? And I think that opens up a lot of opportunity here. Maybe not this week, but, as we go down the home stretch here, trying to take some teams that have gotten it done with defense and see if we can find value betting against them.
All right, watch this space. Adam Chernoff, I mentioned previously you were at MetLife Stadium for one of those rare Jets wins. Anything else to take away from it? I hope you backed the over in that one, because that was a pretty comfortable bet.
Yeah, that Jets secondary with all those injuries, pretty wide open. I think they were kind of fortunate in a way to get away with that victory. There were guys running wide open in that secondary. So interested to see how they'll handle that going forward. They still haven't signed anyone, but they did sign Adam Gase for 2020. Gave him the vote of confidence that he'll be back.
Jeez, the damage damage is already done. But Sam Darnold, in his interview post-game, seems to be quite confident that they're not out of the playoff hunt. So, let's keep an eye on that one. Brad Allen, quite a good weekend again for you. Another profitable one on Insights.
Yeah, we made another unit or so. A little bit of what Drew said, fading this Niners defense, faded the Patriots defense last week. So, in agreement with that. And then one of the biggest what the hell results of the season in that Saints game, apparently the sort of difference in the spread, that big Underdog winning by that much, it's like a once every 5-year event. And I've been trying to dig into that a little bit today to find out what went on. But we might get to that later, might we, with the Falcons?
Yeah, we'll dig into some of those games. And like, the Saints didn't even get across the end zone. That's absolutely nuts against one of the worst defenses in the league. But that Atlanta defense just came to play, whatever was going on there. Let's get to Twitter, guys. Thanks for getting your questions in. Unfortunately, we can't get to all of them. So we picked out the 2 best ones this week. Drew, I'll start with you first on this one. Question from Shane at Orange 1979. Could you ask your panel what team is a good back to lay to reach the division playoffs and the Super Bowl final from the West Coast side? He's thinking out west. So you touched on the 49ers a second ago, Drew. That NFC West is pretty stacked right now. Are you thinking that they could be a good, to take on in future weeks?
So 2 weeks ago, we talked about who the most overrated team was in the NFL among the winning records. And I think both Adam and myself suggested that the Seahawks were the answer. And now I'm going to turn around and tell you they probably have the most value to win the West. Not just. I don't think you can discount what Russell Wilson is doing to overcome his coaching disadvantage and the poor defense that lines up on the other side of the field when he's going up against some of these teams. But they have a perfect setup here to win the West, because we're seeing that Jimmy G is limited in his court, what he can do. He's not going to win you a game if your defense is not getting key turnovers, if they're not, creating havoc plays. Then Jimmy G is not going to get it done necessarily, which means they're in a very fragile situation. And then you look at their, the other potential angle there in the West with the Rams, who have cluster injury in the interior of an offensive line that was already shaky. This is a huge problem because Jared Goff is Jekyll and Hyde quarterback when he's under pressure and when he's got time to throw. And so the likelihood that the Rams pull it together and compete for the West, I think, is fleeting. So the Seahawks are kind of by default. Someone has to win that division. Don't think I'm ready to make a case that it's going to be the Cardinals. So I guess Seahawks are the right answer there. But, I think, we'll the time is probably not this week. I think there's another opportunity in December where you get a little bit better buy low, sell high sort of situation with the Niners. I don't think you want to do it right now after having just seen the Seahawks pull out that pretty miraculous win over the Niners.
Adam Chernoff, you were nodding your head in total disagreement there. You obviously placed the Seahawks as the most overrated team in the league. Monday night changed much for you?
No, I don't think so. I'm still looking. It's a tricky team to oppose, but I think the market said a lot with where that price ended up closing. This is a team that continuously finds pretty miraculous way to come out of games with victories. So I'm not looking to back the Seattle Seahawks anytime soon. I guess to answer the question, though, the West Coast team, if we're allowed to go to the AFC, I think that the Raiders present a little bit of value from a back to lay perspective, just considering their schedule down the road and how efficient that offense has been. So if we're just talking solely back to lay, and I would consider the Oakland Raiders potentially at the number. Not sure if I can put you on the spot to know what that number is currently at Matchbook, but I would assume that it's much better than everywhere else in the industry, knowing how competitive the prices are over at Matchbook.
Yeah, I'll get to that in a second. Brad Allen, West Coast team that, you're looking to maybe take on that's maybe small but overvalued right now.
Yeah, I'd agree with Adam, actually. The Oakland Raiders, the offense is top 5 by some of these success rate metrics. They've got a couple of easy games coming up. And the Chiefs look a little bit wobbly. But, yeah, I would say that they're a decent bet to get in the playoffs. And with an offense that's that good, you've got a chance.
Yeah. Brad, I'll stay with you for a second. Just one other question here from Twitter from Dahi at David Barry. Thanks for getting in touch, David. Just wondering, as we're in the second half of the season now and the bad weather potentially is a greater influence on totals, is there an overreaction initially or generally? And, our unders generally overbet, Brad. I don't think we have it this weekend. Well, let's not kid ourselves. This weather is going to come at some stage. We're going to get snow games. We saw bits of it, obviously, with the Packers and the Panthers last weekend. In previous weeks, we saw the Bills and the Eagles with the wind. What are you thinking here, Prof? Look, is it a valid point that unders tend to get overbet in those spots?
It seems they do get overbet when it's wintry mix, when it's rain, snow, or what we saw last week at Green Bay. Because I think historically you'll find that there's not too much of an impact on scoring. There is obviously games like that Lions-Eagles one a few years back, you might remember, where it was just like a foot high in snow and Shady McCoy was dancing around. Where it can kill scoring. Generally, wind is considered more of an impact on scoring, but that also seems to be factored more into the market of this year and last year. So there is no one-size-fits-all, basically, is the answer to that, but generally wind more impact.
Absolutely. Okay. Good weekend for the underdogs last week, guys. If you're backing Akas on Matchbook, I would suggest you either made a lot or you just didn't make any money at all, because we had double-digit favorites going down all over the place. The Colts, the Saints. Who else am I missing there, guys, that went down big time? The Chiefs were a massive one here. You could have thrown the Chiefs in at 1.35 at Matchbook on Sunday. Yeah. But don't forget, Niners. There you go. Niners, another good one. We had a big weekend for the underdogs. That may turn this weekend. Don't forget, you can now place your Akas on Matchbook, NFL Sunday, the Red Zone. That is the time to do it at Matchbook. That is the way to go, and you will get a pretty good price. We will get to our Akas later on in the show, but let's start off with Monday Night Football from the Stadium Azteca in Mexico City. Current betting, the Kansas City Chiefs here on the money line at 1.55. The Chargers at 2.78. Main handicap right now is the Chargers +4 at 1.96. Total is 52. Brad, I want to start with you here first. We kind of touched on weather a while ago. 7,000 feet, over 7,000 feet above sea level is the Azteca here. Is there anything we can kind of look into? Because we obviously missed this game last season with the Rams and Chiefs were, getting involved. What do we look at altitude-wise here for some betting angles? Or are there any? Or is it a bit overplayed?
No, I think there's definitely betting angles. The one, which I don't know if you can get a market up for this on Matchbook, would be field goal overs. Obviously, thin air makes the ball just travel further. Mahomes was saying this week he reckons he can throw it 100 yards in Mexico City, which we'd all like to see. But field goal overs, I don't know if there's any lines out yet, but something that might be available to be taken advantage of. And then
I think generally you're looking at that's probably about 3.5, Brad. I think it's maybe
length.
3.5.
You're talking about
length. I was thinking length.
Oh, length. Apologies. Okay,
over
it's been
46
told.
and a half, for
Okay.
example. Longest field goal over 46 and a half, something like that. And then obviously the defense is going to get tired. I think the game we saw here was Patriots Raiders possibly a few years back, and that had a lot of scoring in the second half. I think that went over. So yeah, that would be one to look out for. In preparation, it looks like the Chiefs have been staying in Kansas City, have not really changed anything, whereas the Chargers have gone to Colorado Springs, 6,600 feet, a little bit less, but they're
Air Force, baby. That's Air Force.
Yeah, they're doing a mini camp over there. Mixed reactions to it. Joey Bosa was asked about it in a press conference, and he sort of was a bit angry about it, and then stopped himself, said, "Don't ask me any more questions. I'm going to say something stupid," because I guess he's not happy with it. The scientific evidence, from what I was reading, there's not really any evidence that it does actually help you adjust. But Anthony Lynn was like, "Scientists haven't played football. What do they know?" So he's that kind of coach, isn't he?
He's probably just pissed off he didn't get to take up some MiGs or fucking whatever up in the sky.
Yeah.
That's why he's pissed off over.
So I would guess not really much of an edge from going to Colorado Springs personally. But they've all played in altitude at Denver, although that is a bit lower. So I wouldn't say the Chargers are getting a huge edge.
Yeah, and it's an interesting one, Drew Dinsick. I mean, look, the books originally opened this total at 49. It's obviously jumped up 52. It's almost like, hang on. Oh, actually, I forgot this game is in Mexico City. Is there value here on the total, or have you played a side in this one?
Yeah, no, I think there is value on the over. I think we're talking about a bunch of correlated things here. The field goal length over, the field goal numbers of field goals over is probably good too, because if you're at the 40-yard line, like, you're not punting, just kick the field goal. The good chance your guy's going to make a 55-yarder. So I think that that inflates the the expected total points. That and all of those are reasonable looks, because who knows if who knows how much time they're putting into pricing those. Although this is a standalone game on Monday Night Football, so maybe they wait a little bit and they think a little harder before they hang those numbers. I personally really am very dialed in on the Chiefs in this game. I think you are talking about one quarterback who has a live arm who can throw it 100 yards, and one quarterback who has a dead arm who is going to have a very difficult time taking advantage of the weaknesses of the Chiefs defense. This is, I think, what we saw from Phillip Rivers on Thursday Night Football last week against the Raiders was pretty clear. He is not the quarterback we have seen in years past. His shoulder, his arm is not as strong, not as capable as we've seen. He has virtually no zip on his ball at this point in his progression as a quarterback. So I think it is completely reasonable to expect the Chiefs to kind of name their score here, get back on track after a couple of tough weeks here, and Mahomes show out on their way into the bye week.
Adam Chernoff, I was one of those people who had the Chiefs in an ACCA at the weekend. Shame on me, on the road, the 1-3 mark. That defense that Drew mentioned there, that probably Rivers won't have success with it, were borderline disgraceful in the second half. It just reminded me of, that AFC title game against the Patriots, where you knew the Patriots were coming on the field and they just weren't going to get a stop. They've had the whole offseason to change this. They brought in a new defensive coordinator. Adam, surely, is there any hope with this Chiefs defense that they're going to get stops against anyone right now?
Well, I think that the pass defense is a little bit disrespected overall. They're playing to a top 10 level in terms of success rate. In the middle, though, that weakness is still there. The numbers are a little bit misleading. It's pointing them out to be able to top 15 success rate defense stopping the run. But as you mentioned, like against a team like Tennessee with a powerful running back in Derrick Henry, they're always vulnerable to that. And you go back, like you mentioned as well, to that New England game last year where it's like we can do whatever we want offensively. And we've seen a couple times this year where the Chiefs have struggled with that. And when they can't get stops and get off the field, then their secondary suffers from that. I think that everything mentioned so far by Brad and Drew is pretty spot on about this game. Don't necessarily love the matchup of Phillip Rivers throwing the football against this secondary. But you look at the Chargers, top 10 in rushing success rate offense. So potentially they can find success running the football here. And again, sort of take advantage of that secondary, which if it gets worn down in the second half because of the altitude, then there's chances for the Chargers to move the football. I don't love anything here. I think that this number is priced pretty well in terms of putting out a neutral field number. it becomes pretty easy because there's not much really priced into it either way. So I think this is a pretty true side. We might even see some Chargers money come in, and maybe this gets down a little bit lower. So if you are liking the Chiefs, maybe wait till like Friday, Saturday. You might see this come down to like a 3.5 as people get a little bit cute looking to back the Chargers. But it's just not a game I have too much interest in. But I would certainly be KC or nothing in this one.
Drew, before we move off this one, happy enough to lock in Kansas City -4?
I am. I have this as a touchdown as my median projection here. Chiefs by a touchdown, that is. So I would. I'm okay taking it now. I personally I'm on Chiefs -4 at plus 106, I think. So it's
nice.
yeah.
Okay.
But you're probably Adam. You're probably right. It's probably going to get to 3.5.
Yeah.
This is Pat Mahomes and Tyreek Hill and Merkel Hardman show. I'll be interested to see how many times they can hit the home run in this one because it's set up perfectly for them.
Okay.
Well, if Mahomes can throw a football 100 yards, I'm pretty sure the wheel route is wide open against these Chargers linebackers. The 90-yard dump down the field.
Yeah, didn't mention it either, but the Chiefs pass rush should get home against it was pretty crazy that the Chargers could only manifest 24 points against that Raiders defense last week. So I would expect that this is a pretty one-sided affair.
Yeah, I know he generally has a slow release, guys, but Phillip Rivers looked like he was taking age to get that ball out on Thursday night, and that's some big words. Brad, do you want to come back in there?
Yeah, Okun questionable, the left tackle. He was, he's been back sort of a game and a bit, and did improve the offensive line, but now he's questionable again, was injured again. So yeah, I agree that this Chiefs pass defense is a little bit underrated, and I like the Chiefs -4 as well.
All right, Chiefs -4 is the consensual agreement here on Monday night. Let's move on to Sunday night, gentlemen. The Chicago Bears at the Los Angeles Rams. Where to begin with these Rams? I got to admit it, guys. That game last week, you absolutely nailed it. Unders and the plus in the Steelers. Nailed it. Jared Goff wouldn't get anything done. Let's have a look at Sunday night's betting, though. First of all, the Bears head into the LA Coliseum. Current betting at Matchbook on the money line back to Chicago. Bears 3.58. The Rams at 1.38. Main handicap line is 6.5. The Bears obviously getting started. You can back that at 2.0 currently a Matchbook. 40.5 is the total. Drew Dinsick, we'll start with you here first. Like I said, where to begin with the Rams?
Yeah,
so bad.
Yeah, it's tempting when you have a very solid perspective on the game and it comes through in spades like that. It's tempting to kind of get cute and think, okay, well now I'm gonna go opposite that and come back with a contrarian look. Now the Rams are gonna look great. But I don't see anything except kind of a repeat of what we saw last week. To be honest with you, this Rams team still suffers from the same fundamental problems with the interior of their offensive line. You have a brand new starting center now. This guy that they are trotting out here to play right guard. My goodness, he does not belong on a professional football field. I do not. And when you have a guy like Goff who is, his limitations when he's under pressure, and you still, can't figure out how to adjust your offense in a way that, that really gives him more protection, more time, or adjust your play calling, play sequencing so that, he's rolling out and getting away from the pressure as opposed to just consistently being under the heat. This is a tough spot here. And, we're going to, McVay's under a lot of pressure. McVay's under a lot of fire. And, one thing that was kind of unsaid as to why I expected the Rams to look a little suspect last week was they had just been traveling a whole heck of a lot. People were pricing them off of a bye like they were going to be fresh and, ready to go. But we're seeing this extended effect of London travel really impacting teams and how they prepare the following week. And, granted now they're back home in LA, but, there's still going to be some shadow from all the traveling that they've done this season. And a lot of these guys went to Hawaii in the preseason, which is, another tough trip. So, this Rams team, looks like the Super Bowl hangover or whatever you want to has really set in. They have huge limitations on depth on, both sides of the ball. Linebackers not doing a great job tackling. They really only have one guy in Jalen Ramsey who can, shut down your passing offense. And I guess you put Jalen Ramsey on the right side of the field and dare Mitch Trubisky to throw left in this game. But this sets up pretty well again for an under 42 if you can still find it. Under 41.5 is a good play. Under 41, you're starting to get a little bit tight. At that point, if that's the best option to you, then I'm starting to think maybe I'm looking at Bears plus 6.5 as an alternative to that. I think this is like a 17-14 Rams kind of a win here. I think that both team total unders are in play, and I think the Bears are live, but it's going to take a little bit more competent offense than we've seen the last handful of weeks out of them.
Just before I come to Adam, your best bet last week, Drew, was the Bears -2.5. Obviously, that line, pretty much got put the other way when Stafford was out. But you were still sweating at the end there.
I know, it's true, and I did. We didn't get it to break it down in the video, but I had gotten some inside info that Stafford wasn't feeling all that well, and I expected it to be like a 30-degree kind of a gross game, and I was like, oh man, one hit by the Bears and Stafford's out of this game.
Man, if I had known that, I definitely would have bet the Bears. I was wondering what the Bears angle was, to be honest.
So and you're right. It took a couple of lucky penalties and a couple of key stops there at the end to keep Jeff Driscoll from coming back on you. But again, a lot of times, when you have a last-minute quarterback switch like that and the team's not prepared for it, crazy things can happen. And I honestly, I have more respect for the Lions offense than I do the Rams offense right now. The way that this offensive line for the Rams is just completely imploding. So
crazy stuff. Adam Chernoff, you are Mr. Anti-Jared Goff. I think a lot of it, though, is on the road. Could you make the case that Jared Goff back in the LA Coliseum that bad Jared Goff shall become average Jared Goff?
Yeah, exactly. And then, so this week, the checklist not necessarily entirely in play. And I think that the thing that most bettors are going to go back to here is obviously replicating that handicap. And I think it makes sense. But I do think that this week looks a little bit different. And the kicker here is really the strength of the secondary. And so what we've seen with Goff, especially this year, is obviously the pressure numbers are bad. The decision-making is poor. But when that is coupled with a strong secondary, that's really where the struggles come. And that was the case against the Pittsburgh Steelers. But the Bears, bit of a step down, 18th against the pass this year, but they're also pretty weak against the run, 21st. And so I'm potentially looking here at a Rams angle, and I look at the offensive line, I say the interior, that's going to be the issue within this handicap. But you're kind of looking to make a case for the Bears. They lost Akeem Hicks a couple of weeks ago right in the middle of that defensive line, and now they're losing Danny Trevathan right behind him. So all of a sudden, the middle of the field where the Rams are the weakest is also where the Bears are the weakest too. So it kind of negates that big issue that the Rams are dealing with, potentially to an extent on the offensive line. Bears 14th in pass rush win rate, so that's also a step down from the Steelers. As you mentioned, though, the venue switches and it becomes a little bit more easier to manage for the Rams for whatever reason. They seem to perform a lot better, as does Goff in this situation. It's just not a game I want to get involved with so many question marks. Don't want to end up laying this big of a number with Goff at home. I do think that there's a lot unsaid about the Rams defense. I've been pretty harsh on the turnover within the secondary. They haven't necessarily proven against a big opponent since this turnover occurred that they're going to be a top 10 defense like the numbers are showing that they are. But they don't get much of a competition here in the Bears, who are bottom third in the league in pretty well every offensive category. So it's just a game that I think is priced somewhat correctly. I think the market's pretty clear that this adjustment up against the Bears versus where the Rams were priced against the Steelers last week just makes a lot of sense within the matchup, but not a game that I would lay a touchdown with a total this short, and I just can't quite get there with the points either. So let's stay away from me.
All right, Brad Allen, what are you thinking on this one? Like I said at the top here, you very much called the Steelers and Rams on the money last week.
Yeah, I'd probably agree it's more of the same. And arguably the Rams situation has got even worse. Obviously, they lost the centre. They lost the right tackle as well now. They're already starting a backup guard. They're going to move the backup guard over to centre. So they're going to have a backup right guard, backup right tackle, backup centre, which is... And, as we know about Goff, that he's not good under pressure. Now, the Bears, agreed, they're not what they were last year, but they're still around 12th in sort of defensive line rankings or pass rush. And I think that's going to be more than enough to overcome sort of an entire backup offensive line. So I guess the question is, do you want Trubisky on your side and the Bears plus 6.5, or do you want the under? And we probably know the answer to that, because this Rams defense is top 5 by a few metrics as well. So, yeah, I will plump for the under.
So yeah, let's just quickly talk about the under before we go on to this. Drew, you mentioned the team totals here. So we're looking at a current line at the time of recording at 40.5. So we're kind of suggesting 23 for the Rams, 17 for the Bears. And one I kind of look at here, and you might talk me out of it, if you get something like that key number over 17 for the Bears, I'm probably wishful thinking here. It's probably more likely to land than 16.5. Would you be kind of keen enough to take the under there? Because I just can't see. That Rams defense is still pretty good. I can't see where the Bears score here. You're on mute there, Drew. You did a bit of a Brad Allen. Yeah, that can happen.
We've all done it now, Sonny. You did it last week, pal.
Well, you know,
I
the
think
thing
I'm
was,
the only one that's clear.
yes, Adam, you were totally due. You were totally due.
We've
We've had 2 weeks of Brad not doing this, so yeah, it's your turn, Drew. What are you thinking there anyway, Drew? Regards the Bears team total?
16.5 is awfully tight.
Yeah.
You're counting on a clean game from the Rams, not turning the ball over, which
Fair
I think
point.
is
Okay.
tricky if Mac can, because I think Adam made a really sound point when Akeem Hicks went out. It was underreported, underpriced in terms of how it impacted the Bears defense, because if you get, because one of their strengths beyond just having standout players was they had depth across, they had a number of guys you had to account for in that defensive line. And once Akeem Hicks was not a factor, then you could put two hats on Khalil Mack and you completely change their ability to generate pressure. I would still say, though, that you're not going to be able to not give the guys in the interior line a little bit of help here in this game, and which I think takes away the ability to double a guy like Khalil Mack. So if Mack gets after Goff and has a day, I could see a situation where you have some potential turnovers, which creates some short fields, or maybe even defensive scores, which I think is a little bit of a question mark. Plus, you have some decent return men, decent special teams for Chicago. So I'm not in love with under 16.5. I think 17 is definitely a much more bettable number. And but I would say for sure I think the Bears are alive. The Rams there's just too many. They're too thin of a team. They've gone through so much adversity and travel to this point in the season, and the Bears, while they haven't looked good, certainly heading out to LA in a situation where you don't have a ton of home field advantage, this sets up for in a matchup we saw last year where the Bears had all the answers for this Rams team. This is a nice spot for the Bears to get after them.
It's a really good point about the defensive touchdowns. I mean, we look back at last week, the Rams and the Bears, 2 defensive touchdowns in that game. Anytime you get that, your unders are always in trouble, but it still didn't get beaten. We'll tell you how inept both offenses were last night. Right, Drew, just quickly before we go off
it's 2 defensive touchdowns saved that over in Monday Night Football.
There you go. So, yeah, absolutely.
That over was dead, if not for those 2 fumble scores. So that was big.
There you go. That's variance. Under 40.5 currently. Shall we lock it in? It's kind of skimpy. I know you got 41.5. It opened at 42, Drew. 40.5 is
there's 41s widely available. I can see 41.
Well, you can get 41 a matchbook too, of course. But I'm just looking at the exact main line. So what we're going to say a flat 41.
Let's go under 41. Under 41. If we can get it at 1.9. 41 is the number, I think. Under 41.
Yeah, you can actually get it bang on at 1.9. The over is 2.07 on Matchbook at the moment. Okay, so let's look in 41 and a flat 41. Right, let's move on to possibly – there's actually some really good games this year. I wouldn't say this is the game of the week, but it's one of them. The New England Patriots at the Philadelphia Eagles. Current betting at Matchbook on the money line. The Pats are 1.56. The Eagles at 2.71. Main point spread is 3.5, 1.97. The Eagles plus 3.5, 44.5 is the total, down from 46. Brad, I think this is one of those games similar to last week where myself and Adam disagreed on the Bills and the Browns, that you and Drew are in a lock fight here. Make the case for your side, first of all, sir.
Well, so the number as it stands, if you just look at season-to-date metrics, I'll probably make it around 3.25. But I hate to be the person that looks at trends because most of them are garbage. Most of them are just data mining and meaningless.
Yep.
But the Patriots have some staggering numbers in their favour. So we know, first of all, that just backing Belichick, he does so many of these little tiny edges, just stacking those edges up, whether it's deflating the football slightly or changing how they do the kickoff so people go and return it to the 18-yard line instead of the 25. That he has just covered 62% since 2003. So if you just back them, you'd be doing well. Then we've got road favourites off a bye. I guess the idea is that they're entirely focused, they're rested. The road favourites off a bye, 61-28 against spread, 69%. New England off a bye since 2003. Brady and Belichick, 24-4 against the spread. That's 85%. Yeah. New England off a loss under Brady and Belichick since 2003. 40-16. That's 71% against the spread. So, they're going to get their left tackle Isaiah Wynn back, which I think shores up quite a key issue with this. They've got their rookie wide receiver N'Keal Harry back. They've got Sanu out there with Edelman and James White. I think they're going to be whole again. Got all these trends in our favour, and I just don't think the Eagles are that good a team. Then Carson Wentz is excellent. He's kind of second my PFF metrics, but his weapons have been abysmal. They've all ranked below average according to PFF. Alshon Jeffrey being slow, Zach Ertz doesn't look like what he is, and then the rest of it is a cast of nobodies. And I think the Patriots defensive backs, although we know defensive metrics aren't sticky, these defensive backs, they should be able to blanket these weapons. And obviously that gives you a nice matchup advantage to try and stop the run. So I think this is a nice matchup. I think these trends are hard to ignore personally. And I'll take the Patriots.
There's a podcast I used to listen to, one in the States. And by the way, Drew Dinsick and Adam Jones, not your podcast, but your guys' top stuff. But this podcast last week, Prof, I listened to it for the first time all season, and they just went on about trends in every game. And that was their case for every bet. And it's such a lazy thing, Prof, isn't it? I mean, like, anyone can sit down and go onto Odds Shark or wherever and look at trends. It is lazy, but those ones are pretty damning.
I agree. It's generally an excuse not to do the work. It's just they're 10-3 on a Thursday when the moon is shining. But I do genuinely think that coaching is obviously it's key. It's often underrated by the market. And do you think it's random that Belichick and Brady have those stats off a bye, off a loss? I personally don't think it is. I think it is attention to detail and that kind of thing.
But there's a good sample size because they've been in the league for so long. I've seen trends where, 10 or 12-year trends, but you've changed quarterbacks, you've changed coaches, but these two guys have been there. They're the ready stays there. Yeah,
the question is always, is there an underlying reason? Is there a sensible, logical reason that should be true and continue to be predictive? And I think there is in this case.
Drew Dinsick, Brad Allen has made the case for the New England Patriots. Now, sir, you made the case for the Eagles.
So it's in Philly. Home field advantage is back. And mostly I'm interested in, kind of the Patriots offense still has enormous limitations. They have virtually no chemistry between Brady and his receiving core outside of Julian Edelman. They have no ability to generate the rush. They still have huge question marks with the way that this offensive line has come together from a cohesion standpoint. All of this could be fixed coming out of the bye. That's entirely reasonable. But if you're going up against a team that I consider to be among still the top, the top tier of contenders in for the Super Bowl, and a team that's done it, to you before, and knows how to prepare to attack you and what you like to do in the Philadelphia Eagles, this is a brutal matchup for them in pretty much every way I look at this. This is you have Carson Wentz's ability to elude the pass rush, move the aggressiveness on the coaching staff to go for it when they know that they're the disadvantaged team in this game. They're going to be very aggressive, and you have kind of a weakness appearing in the Patriots defense and their ability to stop the run. We saw the Eagles come away with a perfect game plan to attack the Packers, who had almost the same weakness in that Thursday Night Football game before. I wouldn't be surprised at all if you see more jumbo packages and more intensity from the rushing attack here from Philly to set the tone early, to sustain drives, to keep Brady on the sidelines, to keep them from generating some some comfortable offensive performance here. And this is this Patriots team is overrated. on defense, probably, definitely on offense, and they're going to go up against a pretty true test in a pretty hostile environment. So this is one where I think this should have been lined closer to a 50-50 game as opposed to giving us a swing on the Eagles
you got the hook, and you get the
on
hook as
the
well,
right side of the key number.
Yeah.
That is just it's just a good spot for for this to be a kind of game that's decided by whoever has the ball last, whoever can make a field goal. Another limitation with the Patriots right now, they are not clicking on special teams. They do not have the kicker on roster right now to make that clutch kick. So I think this sets up for Philly to come away with steal a win potentially, and if not, at least stay inside the key number of 3.
Adam Chernoff, before I ask you to break the tie, Brad Allen, you wanted to come back in with a quick rebuttal.
I just want to ask why we think the Eagles are still good. I know we have. I know we've got the easy comparison here is, oh, look what they did in the Super Bowl. They knew they were underdogs. They came out very aggressive, but they don't have the deep threat they had there. They don't have Frank Reich, who seems to have been the third down guru. They don't have any weapons, and you can be sure that the Patriots will know the Eagles have a very tangible weakness in that their defensive backs aren't very good, but you can't run the ball against them. Do you think Belichick will not let Brady go out and throw it 80% of the time? He will throw on those DBs all day. And as I say, I think that left tackle back will help them protect.
Come on, Drew, you've 1 minute. Fight back.
So the DB situation for the Philadelphia Eagles has been greatly exaggerated, in my opinion. They had a cluster injury from weeks 3 to week 7. It was exposed like as clear as day in a couple of very big games, big spots, most notably against the Packers and then against the Cowboys. But they've slowly gotten guys back. They've slowly gotten back to where they had their preseason, their preseason roster of defensive players. Short of Nigel Bradham, who I think is an important player for them, I think they're going to be relatively healthy on defense, which is important. And I would say that you're right, Frank Reich is not there. This team's not going to score 42 on the Patriots. I don't think they have to, though. I think you're talking about it getting to 24, 27, I think puts the right pressure on this Patriots team to where their offense is going to have a difficult time. Edelman is going to go off. Sure, he'll probably have 11 catches. He may have 100 yards. But short of that, there's just really no chemistry between Brady and his receiving core right now. And his offensive line is in a terrible, terrible spot here matchup-wise. They have not faced a lot of very tough defensive lines across the first 8 games this season. This is going to be a huge test for Scarnecchia's unit, and with the replacement centers and the replacement tackles, this is not great setup for the Patriots offense to do anything on Sunday.
In typical South Philly Rocky style, the whale capper comes fighting back. Adam Chernoff, I haven't forgotten about you, by the way. I just wanted those guys to do a bit of sparring for a while. Can you break the tie on this one?
I've got the Eagles as the best team in the NFC, and I'll put context to that with they are at the lowest possible point of their range within my ratings. I've got them with the most upside of any team in the NFC, and it's not close. You guys have known me for a couple of years now. I'm a pretty easygoing guy. I've picked like 2 or 3 arguments with Eagles beat writers in the last week and a half because they continuously continue to take on Carson Wentz and say that there's questions about whether he should be leading this team. You look at some of the charts that come out if you're comparing QBR versus PFF grades. He's just a slight bit worse than Russell Wilson and Dak Prescott, who are getting MVP talk for their respective teams. So I think that the disrespect for the Eagles is enormous, and they're in a spot where they're favored to win their division, despite playing the most difficult part of their schedule up to this point, and with a walkthrough the rest of the way, with their most difficult game here this week and then against Dallas in a couple of weeks coming at home. But if we want to talk about that defensive back situation just quickly to wrap that up, you look at who they faced this year. Falcons 14th, Lions 7th, Packers 5th, Vikings 6th, Cowboys 3rd in passing efficiency. And this is a team that ranks top 10 in pass defense success rate despite playing those opposing passers. So it's a team that's very misleading from a number of different perspectives. But we look at this matchup specifically, I'm not sure it's as strong of a spot, we can call it, as the Ravens were a couple of weeks ago. Obviously, if this was coming off of that game and there wasn't a buy-in between for both teams, it probably looks a little bit differently. But this is a spot where Philadelphia can dominate with what they do best, and that's physicality in the trenches. You look at the Patriots offensive line, 11th in adjusted line yards. And I think shocking to most people listening, the Patriots have run the 3rd most negative plays this season despite playing that cakewalk of a schedule. You look at the Eagles' defensive line against opponents we just mentioned, third in adjusted line yards, and they forced the fourth most negative plays. As I mentioned, this defense top 10 in both rushing and passing defensive success rate. The Patriots, if we want to sort of parse up this matchup a little bit more, they're 7th in rushing defense efficiency, but they've played just 3 teams that rank better than 18th. And if we want to sort of put a divide between those games, in the games where they've faced opponents outside of the top 18, they've held them to a 34% success rate. That's 14% below league average. In those 3 games against opponents that rank inside the top 18th for rushing efficiency, that drops all the way to 49, which is 1% worse than league average. So a very big dichotomy between the teams that they've placed. The Eagles definitely fit with inside that top 18, but just a bit of a sort of kicker lying around here is we know that this Eagles coaching staff and the game planning they do is notoriously savvy for picking out things here and there to match up against their opponent. The Baltimore Ravens threw everything that they had against this New England defense and found a lot of success doing so. I'm curious to know how much the Eagles coaching staff took from that, seeing that full display of offensive options. I think that 3.5 is a bit large. I don't think that this is as good of a number as what people took last week or 2 weeks ago with Baltimore, but I still think the Eagles certainly live in this spot.
Prof, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to lock in the Eagles plus 3.5. You may have the last laugh on Sunday evening, mate, but, the democracy kind of rules here, 2 against 1. I actually don't have an opinion on this one, so, Prof, I'm going to have to let you hang on this one. By the way, okay, fair enough. By the way, people give out about the New York press. The Philadelphia press is as bad, if not worse. There's just less of them. Yeah, there's just less of them. But they pack an even bigger punch than even New York, I would suggest. Right, guys, let's move on to one of the early games on Sunday. A lot of people in the States pissed off that this is early, wanted to flex into the Sunday night game. Totally get it, by the way. Would you rather see Jared Goff versus Mitchell Trubisky, or would you rather see Deshaun Watson against Lamar Jackson? I know which way I'm going. It suits me and the professor, though, guys. We don't care. We're getting this early one. So let's look at the betting. I'm really excited about this one. The Texans at 2.86 in the money line. Baltimore Ravens at 1.5. The Texans getting a 4-point start at 1.95. 49.5 is the total. Drew, I want to start with you here first. I want to talk about the total. I've listened to the Deep Dive podcast on Monday, as ever. Why isn't this line going the other way?
I got to hope that this is one of those poor reads early in the week by the market. Which we've seen a lot of this year.
I've checked the weather. I know 4 or 5 day forecast. There's no weather there either, Drew.
Yeah, I guess I think this is an overlook. I think this is a Ravens play. I'm still kind of tossing over. I'd like to hear your guys' feedback on this too, because I'm not sure which of those two I should be more confident. But as far as the flexing goes, I learned a couple of interesting things. Number one, NBC is never going to flex out of an LA game, apparently. But just because of the personnel and who works the games and all of their setup, like they're going to take those LA games even if they're bad. And then number two, did you know you can only flex a 4 p.m. game into an 8 p.m. spot? You can't actually take a 1 p.m. all the way to the flex. So anyway, it was never even available for a flex. So everybody just cool your jets. That said, it is going to be the game of the week because these are your second and third MVP candidates right now. And 2 guys that should put on an absolutely spectacular show. I'm a little nervous about, I guess, the arguments against the over are, we saw a very specific game plan laid out by Bill O'Brien in London on offense. When he got the ball against the Jaguars, he made it very clear we are keeping our defense off the field. We are going to run down the clock every single time we can. We know we're going to convert third down, so we're going to extend these drives. We're going to make them take 8 minutes instead of 4, and we are going to really, prolong this, this offensive possession in order to hide and keep our defense from being exposed. Now, it turned out not to matter because Jacksonville completely no-showed offensively in that game. But I would still say that there's a likelihood that they come in with that same mindset of we're going to grind this. We are going to, make this, take a little bit longer. My personal opinion is that's not going to work. This Baltimore defense has made enough improvements. They've gotten enough guys back healthy that I don't think you're just going to be able to convert third downs at will. in this game. You're not going to be afforded the opportunity to extend your drives so that they're 6-8 minutes long. Baltimore can do that to you if they feel like it, but you aren't going to be able to do that to them. They're going to put pressure on you because they're going to convert their drives are going to be touchdown scoring drives. I don't see anything on the field for the Houston defense that's going to offer much of a resistance at all to this Baltimore offense. They are clicking on all cylinders and have so many different ways that they can attack you right now. As long as Lamar Jackson is healthy and playing at this level, then Baltimore's floor on any given game is about 30 points, the way I handicap them. And against a team like Houston, you know, the likelihood that they get to 30, 35, I think is pretty reasonable, which means, can Houston answer? And I guess I've seen enough from Deshaun Watson, especially in crunch time, in clutch moments, end of half, end of game. He can answer. He can score points. He can get back into the games if they are, you know, if they're looking like they're getting out of reach. And so I would expect that this is a back and forth score fest, really. And I think, I think Baltimore is the right side at 4.5. I think this should be closer to a 6-point game. And I think the over 49 is a beauty. Over 50.5 at plus money is worth looking at, I think, pretty carefully too. Because like I said, I think Baltimore gets into the 30s here.
All right, the Ravens currently -4 and 49 is the total. Brad Allen, what are you thinking on this one?
I've not had a bet yet. I do think both offenses will be efficient, but as Drew says, there's a huge threat that both of them will try and grind out these 8-minute drives. So I've not touched that. Statistically, I suspect we could see some Baltimore money because some of the more advanced metrics like Massey Peabody, they have them 4 points clear of Houston, who obviously then have some DB injuries, some injuries on the defensive line, JJ Watt. So, I mean, just going off those Massey Peabody numbers, this should be kind of 6+, which don't necessarily factor in the full extent of injuries to Houston as well. So I suspect we could see some money that way.
Drew Dinsick, you wanted to come back in there?
Yeah, I just wanted to give you guys a little fun chance to play a quick game here. What's the most number of punts that the Ravens have had in any game this season?
3.
It's 3. You got it on the nails. They're averaging like 2 punts per game. It's absolutely crazy.
Brad, did you guess that, or you already knew that, Joe?
I did not know that. No, I knew they had the best successful drive rate in the league.
They've only punted like 20 times this whole season. 20 times, and it's week 11. It's absolutely crazy
and ridiculously efficient, yeah.
And not just because of their efficiency, but because John Harbaugh is not punting. Because he's not stupid, like he's legitimately understands like, oh, we can gain 3-4 yards of play multiple different ways. Why would we punt it on the 50-yard line? There's literally no reason. And, that's trickled into a lot of their success. And I absolutely love it. So
yeah, he's not ignorant of analytics, which is great. Some coaches can't get that way. Adam Chernoff, where are you lying on this one?
Nothing for me, but I'll keep it quick from just a handicap perspective. So I think that the coaching mismatch here can't go unnoticed. Arguably the biggest of the season, maybe, between Harbaugh and O'Brien. The only thing that is – I agree that the Baltimore price is probably pretty short. This price is really lean overall. It's something I talked about on the podcast. When you have two teams that are this overpriced, there's never going to be a lack of interest from anyone within the market, especially consider how much volume is going to come in on this game. So the number can be set pretty clean overall without anything really inflated. And when we're talking about this number, it's really suggesting that the Ravens are 1 win better than the Texans over the course of the season, which I don't think is like too unreasonable. But there's really no sort of meat attached on either side of the bone here in terms of the price. So I think it's a very true number. From just a schematic perspective, the Houston defense appears somewhat equipped to handle the rush. They faced 3 top 10 opponents this year in rushing efficiency. They held McCaffrey to 3.4 yards per carry, Mack to 2.4, and Jacobs to 4.4. Those obviously were with J.J. Watt in the lineup, so I don't think that goes unnoticed. But how they play such a soft zone, if there's a style of defense that QB runs, either designed or scrambled, don't have a lot of success against, it's when these teams are playing very soft. So it could be Houston sort of backing their way into a game plan that somewhat limits the explosiveness of the Ravens offense. They also get back Gibson, Roby, and Johnson in the secondary this week. So it's the first time that their secondary has been healthy, and it's actually quietly been performing somewhat well. As much as I might somewhat be tempted to take Houston. There's no way that I can go against this coaching mismatch. And I just think that the number's set really well.
Yeah, look, Texans defense third against the run, but they ain't played anything close to this rushing offense. Before we come off this, Brad, you want to come back in there?
Yeah, well, I think I probably said it last week, but someone pointed out it's amazing what you can do with 33% extra downs, which is kind of plays into the coaching mismatch. But I also just love watching Ravens games with analytics Twitter, because I love seeing someone who's actually looked at the numbers. They've gone, all right, this works, and then they're just obliterating teams. And I quite hope they just shove it down Bill O'Brien's throat. He's a moron.
All right, guys. Adam, I'm just going to get maybe 2 minutes on the Bills and Dolphins here, because we kind of spent a bit too much time, and with good reason, on the Patriots Eagles, so we kind of went through our start here. The current betting on Matchbook, the Bills are laying 6, Dolphins obviously getting a 6-point start. 40.5 is the total. Adam, you kind of wanted this one on the roster. You went against the Bills last week. I obviously was on the Bills. We had a tie on that as a push. What are you thinking this week?
Well, let's just look at this number for a second. These two teams played 4 weeks ago. That game was bet up from -14 to -17 for Buffalo. Obviously, that was high. There was a reason behind why the market took that price up. But if we just sort of do the math here and compare these two numbers, we're looking at about a full touchdown adjustment in favor of the Miami Dolphins. And we look at what's happened in the weeks since these teams have played. Miami held a halftime lead against Pittsburgh before blowing that game up in the second half. They beat the Jets, and then they beat Indianapolis with Brian Hoyer. In all 3 games, they were significantly outgained in yards per play. And this is a team that, despite where sort of the perception is taking them in recent weeks, still ranks extremely poor across the board on both offense and defense. You match them up against the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, the Bills' weakness stopping the run, which is part of the reason why I really liked that Cleveland matchup last week. But Miami, despite their increase in offense in the last couple of weeks, still 31st, both for the season-wide metric as well as the last 4 weeks during the span where they've caught a lot of perception running the football on offense. The loss of Preston Williams became quite apparent last week against the Indianapolis Colts, a soft defense where the Dolphins struggled to move the ball downfield, but Fitzpatrick was not taking the deep shots that he normally has. Josh Allen has taken a lot of criticism this season, but if there's something that he has done well, is take advantage of poor opposing defenses. You look at teams that are sub-24th in passing efficiency. He's faced 5 of them, a 95 passer rating, 5 touchdowns, and 7.6 yards per attempt. In teams that rank above 24th, 49 passer rating, 4 TDs to 4 INTs, and a 5.8 yards per attempt. This game against Miami 4 weeks ago, his best in terms of intended air yards and depth of target, over 10 yards. And there were guys running wide open in the secondary all game that just didn't quite come through. This is a spot where I think the number and the adjustment is pretty ridiculous overall, seeing a touchdown move almost between where we were last week. This is a game where the Bills offense going to have success moving the football, and I just don't buy Miami at this short of a number. I'll gladly take the Bills at 5.5.
Of course, I muted myself.
There we go.
I muted myself. That's
the whole podcast's a joke.
Oh, one podcast, 2 mutes, and none of them are Brad Allen. Yeah. Right? What I was saying when I was on mute. Adam, 6. So yeah, plenty of 5.5 around that. I think 1.93 at Matchbook. Brad, go on. You want to quickly to come back into that? My producer's in my ear currently, so we need to go on.
I'll be quick because I've backed Miami +6 here. So you look at the first game, Miami won the success rate battle. They won the first down battle. The Bills are ranked like 25th by all these advanced metrics. Basically, they've played no one, but they've got the 6-3 record because their defense is good, but it's been against the second easiest schedule. The Dolphins have got the better quarterback, and you can get them with 6 points at home after they've already outstatted this team they've played. So for me, I like the other side.
I was almost going to lock in the Bills as a play there, Adam Chernoff. But look, Brad has come in and he has opposed you. We have to respect the democracy and the rules of this here. Right, let's do a quick recap, guys, before we get into our underdog and best bets. Chiefs, first of all, -4. We're putting that in there. Under 41 in the Bears and the Rams. Pats and Eagles, Prof. We're going to take the Eagles +3.5. Not much you can do about it, mate. Sorry. Let's take the Ravens -4. I know I'm definitely taking over 49 here. I do get the kind of case that it might slow down a bit, but I don't know. This just, it seems a bit, yeah. Anyway, guys, obviously a matchbook. If you sign up today, you get a £10 refund if your first bet loses. Mythical £10 refund bet. Quickly, we will go around the screen. Drew Dinsick, what are you thinking this week? What's the underdog on the money line that most appeals to you?
I'm going to swing away on the Bears. Not only do I think they have life in this game, but this momentum that they're building really appeals to me, and I think they go out to LA and pick up a victory.
Adam Chernoff, what are you thinking?
I'll go Eagles in that spot against the Pats.
The Eagles in that spot, Brad.
Give me the Dolphins. They're gonna win 3 in a row, ruin their tanking plan.
Fitzmagic, baby. My one is going to be, this is very cheeky, guys. These are 1-point underdogs. The New York Jets. I know it's exceptionally cheeky. But look, a dog is a dog. I'm probably getting in over the line. That ACA at Matchbook, by the way, pays 45 to 1, 44. That's not bad. Yeah, that'll be easy money. Don't forget, you can sign up at matchbook.com today. Your first bet does not apply to ACCAs. You must be 18 over, and please gamble responsibly at all time. Offer.matchbook.com is the place to go for that. Right, gentlemen, the most important part. We went 2 winners last week, and obviously myself and Adam went against each other, which is a push, so we're still in the black there. Best bet of the week, and I was starting in the top left of the screen in the clubhouse with the clubhouse lead, -2.5 in the Bears last week. Drew Dinsick, where are you going for your best bet this week?
Gosh, this is so tough because I really like everything we've covered on this podcast. I think are all strong looks. I'll make a case for one we didn't talk about, which is Carolina -5.5 is my best bet. And I think that it's worth laying the points here with Carolina to get back on track against an Atlanta team that's coming off their defense playing their Super Bowl. The likelihood that we're going to see this Atlanta defense put that type of performance up again, I think is a low likelihood. And Kyle Allen, what he's able to do in the passing game when he's in a pretty comfortable situation weather-wise and against a weak defense, he can pick on these guys. He can score points. McCaffrey's a nasty matchup for them. So I think Panthers get back on track here with a comfortable win against the Falcons.
All right. Adam Chernoff, what are you thinking?
So, disclaimer, I'll likely have potentially my largest bet of the season, depending where that Colts-Jags total opens. Still not widely out there. But for right now, best bet of the week, Buffalo Bills -5.5.
Okay, we might just see that on Insights, hopefully. Brad Allen?
Yep.
Give me the Raiders -10. You could probably get that about 1.9. I made it 13, so quite straightforward there. Just stats, really.
Yeah, take on the Bengals. I'm going to go for 49 in that Texans-Ravens game. Sorry, I just got to do it. Got to do it. Thought it would go to 51 or 52. It hasn't. That is kind of worrying me, but to hell with it. What do the Sharps know anymore, guys? We don't even worry about CLV anymore. Right, we're almost out of time. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening today. If you are enjoying the podcast, on the podcast format, be sure to give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. You can subscribe to all the Matchbook content on YouTube also. If you want to see us on the big screen, guys, I watched it back last week on my 54-inch Sony TV. It's a thing of absolute beauty seeing us there on that 54-inch TV.
That's just the whale capper.
That's just the whale capper, yeah. Californian good looks. Right, we are out of here. Best of luck with your Week 11 bets. As ever, it's been a blast. We probably need another hour to do these, by the way. That's something for the producer to decide. Best of luck with Week 11. We'll chat to you next week.